The glass towers of downtown Seattle reflected the late autumn sun as I walked into Vantira Solutions for what I thought would be just another preparation day. I had no idea I was about to walk into a masterclass in workplace betrayal, and my own defining moment. My name is Noelle Carter, and at 33, I'd spent 3 years climbing the ranks as product development lead at Vantira, one of the Pacific Northwest's most promising AI research firms. We weren't just another tech startup throwing around buzzwords. We were building genuine machine learning solutions that could revolutionize how enterprises handled predictive analytics. For 2 months, I'd been living and breathing our latest project, Neurovector, an AI prototype that combined natural language processing with predictive modeling in ways that made our competitors look like they were using calculators. The potential was staggering. Initial projections suggested we could attract $10 million in Series B funding if we could demonstrate real-world applications. And I was the one chosen to present it to the board. This wasn't just any quarterly review. Dr. Felix Monroe, our 62-year-old chairman of the board, had specifically requested a deep-dive presentation on Neurovector's commercial viability. Dr. Monroe was legendary in Seattle's tech scene, a former Microsoft executive who'd helped launch 3 unicorn startups. When Felix Monroe paid attention to your project, careers were made. The irony wasn't lost on me that Monica Reyes, our senior product manager, had initially been slated for this presentation. Monica was 38, had an MBA from Wharton, and possessed the kind of polished corporate presence that photographs well in company newsletters. She'd been with Vantira for 4 years, 2 years longer than me, and had made it abundantly clear that she considered the Neurovector project her intellectual territory. But there was one problem. Monica talked a brilliant game about AI capabilities and market positioning, but when it came to the technical architecture and real-world implementation challenges, she was essentially reading from marketing brochures. Meanwhile, I'd been elbow-deep in the code, working directly with our engineering team, identifying edge cases and building genuine use case scenarios that went far beyond theoretical applications. 3 weeks ago, Jared Liu, our CTO and my unofficial mentor, had made the call. "Noelle," he'd said, pulling me aside after team meeting, "I need you to take point on the board presentation. You understand this technology in ways that matter, not just what it can do, but how it actually works and why that matters to our clients." Monica's smile had been perfectly professional when Jared announced the change, but I caught the flash of something darker in her eyes. From that moment, the temperature in our shared workspace had dropped noticeably. Over the following weeks, Monica's passive-aggressive campaign had been subtle but persistent. She'd forget to include me in strategy meetings. She'd question my technical decisions in front of junior developers. During our team presentations, she'd interrupt with clarifying questions that were thinly veiled attempts to highlight gaps in my business knowledge. "Just making sure we're covering all the bases," she'd say with that practiced smile. "You know how board members think." But I'd pushed through, working late nights and weekends to build something genuinely compelling. My presentation wasn't just slides, it was a comprehensive narrative that started with market need, walked through our technical innovation, demonstrated real-world applications with actual data, and concluded with a roadmap that was both ambitious and achievable. The slide deck had become my obsession. I'd built custom visualizations showing how Neurovector outperformed existing solutions. I'd included case studies from our beta testing with 3 major clients, complete with performance metrics and ROI projections. I'd even created interactive elements that would let board members explore different scenario models in real time. By Monday night, the evening before our Tuesday morning board meeting, I was exhausted but confident. I'd rehearsed the presentation so many times I could deliver it in my sleep. Every slide transition was smooth, every data point was verified, every visual element supported the narrative perfectly. That's when Monica appeared at my desk at 6:30 p.m., just as I was doing final checks. "Hey Noelle," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of helpful concern that I'd learned to distrust. "I've been thinking about your presentation tomorrow. I know you've put incredible work into the technical side, but I'm wondering if we should do a final pass on the business messaging and branding consistency." I looked up from my laptop, immediately wary. What kind of pass? "Oh, you know how Dr. Monroe is about presentation polish. I've been in board meetings with him for years. Sometimes the most brilliant technical work can get lost if the slides don't follow our corporate design standards perfectly." She gestured at my screen. "Mind if I take a look?" Every instinct told me to say no. But I was tired, stressed, and, if I'm being honest, still insecure about my business presentation skills compared to Monica's polished MBA background. The board meeting was in less than 14 hours, and the last thing I wanted was to look unprofessional in front of Dr. Monroe. "I guess that would be helpful," I said reluctantly. "But nothing major, right? I've already rehearsed everything." "Of course. Just branding consistency and maybe tightening up some of the business language. I'll make sure it still sounds like you." Monica's smile was reassuring. "Can you give me editing access? I'll take a quick pass tonight and have it back to you first thing in the morning." I hesitated for another moment, then opened the sharing settings in Google Slides. "Okay, but seriously, no major changes. This presentation is my responsibility." "Absolutely. I'm just here to help you shine tomorrow." I granted her editing access at 6:47 p.m., gathered my things, and headed home for what I hoped would be a good night's sleep before the biggest presentation of my career. I should have known better. My alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely optimistic. I'd slept well, my suit was pressed, and in 3 hours, I'd be presenting Neurovector to the board. Whatever Monica had adjusted would probably make the presentation even stronger. I arrived at Vantira's offices at 7:45 a.m., grabbed a coffee from our kitchen, and settled into the executive conference room to do final prep. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp, and I wanted to run through the slides one more time to see what improvements Monica had made. I opened my laptop, pulled up Google Slides, and clicked on Neurovector Board Presentation, Final Version. The title slide looked fine, our standard corporate template with the Vantira logo and project name. I clicked to the second slide, which should have been my carefully crafted market opportunity overview. Instead, I found myself staring at a slide titled Market Opportunities and Competitive Landscape Analysis, with bullet points that made no sense. Where I'd had specific market sizing data, $47.2 billion addressable market, 23% projected CAGR, Monica had replaced it with vague phrases like significant growth potential and expanding market dynamics. My heart started racing. I clicked to the next slide. My technical architecture diagram, the centerpiece visualization I'd spent hours perfecting, had been replaced with a generic flowchart that looked like it came from a basic PowerPoint template. None of the specific technical innovations were mentioned. The slide now read Neurovector utilizes advanced AI methodologies, with a series of meaningless boxes connected by arrows. Panic began setting in. I frantically clicked through the rest of the presentation. Slide after slide had been gutted. My client case studies, complete with specific performance metrics and ROI calculations, had been replaced with generic testimonial quotes that didn't even mention Neurovector by name. My financial projections, backed by detailed modeling, had become a single slide with rounded numbers that made our projections look amateurish. But the worst part was the errors. Throughout the presentation, Monica had introduced typos and formatting inconsistencies that made me look sloppy. Neurovector was spelled 3 different ways. Charts were misaligned. One slide had a bullet point that simply read additional benefits and synergies TBD. I checked the time, 8:43 a.m. The board meeting was starting in 17 minutes, and my presentation had been professionally assassinated. My first instinct was to panic, but 3 years of debugging complex AI systems had taught me to think systematically under pressure. I stepped out of the conference room and walked quickly to my desk, pulling out my phone to call Alexis Tran, our board assistant. "Alexis, it's Noel. I need a huge favor. Can you delay the board meeting by 10 minutes? Tell them I'm making some last-minute technical adjustments." "Of course," Alexis said without hesitation. "Dr. Monroe just arrived, but I can absolutely buy you some time. Everything okay?" "I'll explain later. Thank you." I hung up and opened my laptop, hands shaking slightly as I navigated back to Google Slides. But instead of opening the presentation, I clicked on something I'd never paid attention to before: File, Version History, see Version History. What I saw made my blood boil and my confidence soar simultaneously. The version history showed every single change made to the presentation, with timestamps and user attribution. At 6:47 p.m. the previous evening, there was my final version, complete, polished, professional. Then, starting at 2:12 a.m., I could see Monica's username appearing next to change after change after change. 2:12 a.m., Monica Reyes removed 847 words. 2:15 a.m., Monica Reyes changed 15 images. 2:23 a.m., Monica Reyes removed 3 charts. 2:31 a.m., Monica Reyes added text, additional benefits and synergies TBD. The evidence was devastating and undeniable. Monica hadn't made branding adjustments. She had systematically sabotaged my presentation in the middle of the night, removing substantive content and introducing errors that would make me look incompetent in front of the board. I took screenshots of every major change, documenting the timestamps and the specific sabotage. Then I restored my original version and saved it under new name, neurovector_board_presentation_final_v2. As I gathered my materials, I felt something I hadn't expected: calm determination. Monica had tried to destroy my work, but she'd done it in the most trackable way possible. Every act of sabotage was documented with her username and timestamp. I walked back toward the conference room at 8:58 a.m., passing Monica in the hallway. She was dressed impeccably in a navy suit, carrying her own laptop and legal pad. "Morning, Noelle," she said brightly. "Ready for your big presentation?" I made just a few tiny adjustments to help with the flow. "Thanks, Monica," I replied evenly. "I'm sure the board will find those changes very interesting." Something in my tone must have caught her attention because her confident smile flickered for just a moment. But it was too late for second thoughts. As I entered the conference room, I could see Dr. Monroe at the head of the table, his silver hair perfectly styled and his sharp eyes already focused. Jared Liu was seated to his right, looking slightly concerned about the delay. Around the table sat 6 other board members, plus Trent Sanders from HR, who always attended board meetings as a silent observer. Monica slipped into the room behind me and took a seat along the wall, positioning herself where she could watch my presentation with perfect view of both me and the board's reactions. I connected my laptop to the projection system and opened my presentation. But instead of starting with slide 1, I did something that would change the trajectory of my career, and end Monica's. I clicked on File, Version History. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "Thank you for taking time for this deep dive on NeuroVector. Before we begin exploring the technology and market opportunity, I want to share something with you that I think speaks to the integrity of both our data and our team." Dr. Monroe raised an eyebrow. This clearly wasn't the opening he was expecting, but his expression suggested curiosity rather than impatience. "As you know, the accuracy and reliability of information is critical in both AI development and business decision-making. So I'd like to demonstrate how we can verify the integrity of our work product using the same principles of transparency and accountability that guide our technology development." I clicked on the version history panel, which appeared on the right side of my screen, and on the large projection screen visible to everyone in the room. This is the version history of our presentation, which shows every change made to this document, by whom, and exactly when. I scrolled to show the timeline. As you can see, I completed the final version yesterday at 6:47 p.m. Monica, seated along the wall, had gone very still. However, I continued, changes were made to this presentation after that point. I clicked on the 2:12 a.m. timestamp. At 2:12 this morning, 847 words were removed from the presentation, including our specific market sizing data, technical specifications, and client case studies. The room was completely silent. I could see Jared Liu's expression darkening as he began to understand what I was showing them. I clicked on another timestamp. At 2:15 a.m., 15 images were changed, including the replacement of our custom technical architecture diagrams with generic templates. I clicked again. At 2:23 a.m., 3 detailed performance charts were removed entirely. Dr. Monroe leaned forward slightly, his sharp eyes moving between the screen and Monica's increasingly pale face. And throughout these changes, I continued, clicking through several more timestamps. Formatting errors and typos were introduced that would have made our presentation appear unprofessional. I highlighted the slide where NeuroVector had been misspelled, including the incorrect spelling of our own product name. Monica suddenly found her voice. "This must be some kind of sync error," she interjected, her professional composure cracking. "Google Slides sometimes has glitches with version tracking." I turned to face her directly, maintaining my calm tone. "That's an interesting theory, Monica. However, the version history shows that I granted editing access to your account at 6:47 p.m. yesterday evening, when you offered to help with branding consistency." I clicked to show the sharing permissions log. "And these changes began at 2:12 a.m., several hours after you confirmed via Slack that you were finished with your review." Alexis Tran, who had been taking notes quietly in the corner, looked up. "I can confirm that Monica sent me a message last night at 11:43 p.m. saying, and I quote, I cleaned up Noelle's deck a bit. Hope she doesn't mind. The silence in the room was deafening. Monica's face had progressed from pale to flushed red. Furthermore, I continued, I can restore any previous version of this presentation to show exactly what was removed and what was changed. I clicked on my 6:47 p.m. version. This is the presentation as I completed it, with full technical specifications, verified data, and professional formatting. Dr. Monroe's expression had shifted from curious to coldly analytical. Trent, he said, addressing our HR director without taking his eyes off Monica, I trust HR will be conducting a thorough review of the situation. Trent Sanders nodded grimly. Absolutely. We'll be following up immediately after this meeting. Now then, Dr. Monroe continued, turning back to me with what might have been the hint of approval in his voice, let's see the actual presentation. I'm quite interested in what you've built. As I clicked back to slide one of my original presentation, I caught Monica's expression out of the corner of my eye. The smugness was completely gone, replaced by the dawning realization that her sabotage hadn't just failed, it had backfired spectacularly. What followed was the presentation of my career. With Monica's sabotage exposed and my credibility established, I walked the board through Neurovector with newfound confidence. Every slide built logically on the previous one, every data point was verified and contextualized, and every technical detail was explained in terms that highlighted both innovation and practical application. Dr. Monroe interrupted twice to ask penetrating questions about scalability and competitive positioning. Exactly the kinds of questions I'd prepared for and Monica's sabotaged version would have been unable to answer. When I demonstrated our real-time performance metrics comparing Neurovector to existing market solutions, showing consistent 340% performance improvements across our beta client base, I watched several board members exchange impressed glances. The financial projections section was particularly strong. I walked through our conservative, moderate, and optimistic scenarios, explaining the assumptions behind each model and identifying specific risk factors and mitigation strategies. This wasn't just wishful thinking backed by marketing speak, this was genuine business analysis supported by real technical capability. The conservative projection shows $2.3 million in revenue within 18 months, based solely on our current beta clients scaling their implementations, I explained. Our moderate scenario, incorporating natural market expansion and 2 additional enterprise clients, projects $6.7 million over the same period. The optimistic scenario, which assumes successful penetration into the financial services vertical, could reach $12.4 million. Board member Sarah Chen, a former McKinsey partner, leaned forward. Noelle, your risk analysis mentions potential competitive response. How do you see established players like IBM or Microsoft responding to Neurovector's market entry? This was exactly the kind of strategic question Monica's sabotaged presentation couldn't have addressed. Excellent question, Sarah. The key differentiator is our approach to real-time model adaptation. While IBM's Watson and Microsoft's Azure AI platform focus on pre-trained models with periodic retraining cycles, Neurovector continuously learns and adapts from live data streams. This means our accuracy improves over time while theirs degrades. By the time they develop similar capabilities, we'll have a 12 to 18-month head start and significantly superior training data. Dr. Monroe nodded approvingly. And the intellectual property position. We have 3 patents pending on the core adaptive algorithms, plus trade secret protection on our training methodologies. Our legal team believes we have strong defensible positioning for at least 36 months, which should be sufficient to establish market leadership. When I concluded the presentation 4 to 5 minutes later, the room erupted in immediate discussion. Dr. Monroe called for a brief recess while the board discussed next steps privately. As board members filed out for their closed-door discussion, Jared Liu approached me with a grim smile. That, he said quietly, was masterful. Both the presentation and how you handled the sabotage situation. Monica had slipped out during the recess, and I didn't see her for the rest of the day. The board reconvened 30 minutes later with unanimous approval to move forward with Neurovector's commercialization. Dr. Monroe announced that Vantira would be launching a Series B funding round with an initial target of $10 million, specifically to scale Neurovector's market entry. More immediately, the board voted to fast-track Neurovector's development with increased budget allocation and expanded team resources. That afternoon, Trent Sanders called me into HR for what he described as a routine follow-up conversation. However, his questions focused entirely on documenting the sabotage incident and Monica's pattern of behavior. Noelle, he said, I want you to know that what happened this morning was completely unacceptable and doesn't reflect Vantira's values in any way. Can you think of any other instances where Monica might have undermined your work or that of other colleagues? I described several incidents over the past months: the forgotten meeting invitations, the public questioning of my technical decisions, the subtle attempts to exclude me from strategic discussions. As I talked, Trent took detailed notes. "We'll be conducting a broader investigation," he said. "This kind of behavior is a serious breach of professional ethics and potentially grounds for termination." 2 days later, Monica was suspended pending investigation. HR interviewed several other team members and discovered a pattern of similar behavior toward other colleagues Monica perceived as threats. Apparently, I wasn't her first target. Within a week, Monica was terminated for breach of professional ethics and conduct detrimental to team collaboration. The following Monday, Jared Liu asked me to join him for coffee. "Noel," he said, "the board was incredibly impressed with your presentation and how you handled that situation. Your technical leadership on Neurovector has been outstanding, and your professionalism under pressure was remarkable." He paused, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Would like to offer you Monica's position as Senior Product Manager, with immediate effect. The role comes with a 28% salary increase, equity participation in our Series B round, and direct board presentation responsibilities for all major product initiatives." I didn't need time to think about it. "I accept, with one request." "Name it." "I want to implement a transparency protocol for all high-stakes collaborative work. Version history tracking, dual authentication for major changes, and clear accountability measures. What happened with my presentation should never happen to anyone else on our team." Jared smiled. "Done. In fact, the board specifically asked me to have you lead the development of those protocols. They want to make sure our collaborative processes match the integrity of our technology." 6 months later, Neurovector secured $9.5 million in Series B funding, exceeding our initial target. The transparency protocols I developed have been adopted company-wide and have actually improved our overall productivity by reducing miscommunication and version control issues. But the most satisfying outcome wasn't professional, it was personal. Monica's sabotage attempt had been designed to make me look incompetent and unprepared. Instead, it provided the perfect opportunity to demonstrate competence, preparation, and professional integrity under pressure. Her attempt to destroy my credibility had actually established it more firmly than any normal presentation could have achieved. 3 months after the board presentation, I launched a monthly mentorship program for junior team members, particularly those who might be overlooked or undermined by more senior colleagues. The program focuses on technical skill development, but also on professional resilience and strategic thinking. The best defense against workplace sabotage, I tell my mentees, isn't paranoia or conflict avoidance. It's competence, documentation, and maintaining your integrity even when others don't maintain theirs. During our first mentorship session, one of the junior developers asked me how I stayed so calm during the board presentation when I discovered the sabotage. "I wasn't calm," I admitted. "I was furious. But I realized that Monica's sabotage was also her mistake. She documented every act of sabotage with timestamps and her user account. She'd created a perfect evidence trail of her own unprofessional behavior." "So you used her weapon against her?" "No," I said. "I used the truth. Monica's weapon was deception and sabotage. My weapon was transparency and competence. In the long run, those are always more powerful." Today, Neurovector is generating $3.2 million in quarterly revenue and expanding into 3 new market verticals. I've been promoted again to VP of Product Development, and I report directly to the board on all major technology initiatives. Monica's LinkedIn profile shows she's still looking for work. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply being excellent at what you do, maintaining your integrity, and letting the truth speak for itself. Especially when your opponents are foolish enough to document their own sabotage. The version history doesn't lie. And in the end, neither do results.